So speak then of Nights of Kleptomania, a presentation by Tariq Malik at Surrey Muse on 22nd July 2022. This historic week of July 23rd, we are chanting Denied Shores. Excerpts from Chanting Denied Shores. This is the cover of my book. Bashir Adrift, final quarter of the night, 21st May 1914. Approaching the final quarter of the night, all human-board activity finally ceases. The ship's cavernous hull now begins to reverberate in response to a deep and sonorous wailing surfacing up from the depths. The sing-song peaks over the metronomic thrum and hiss of the ship's bellows before subsiding into silence. Whale song informs my agitated mind as I try to pad silently up the clanging metal steps. No, a call to prayer, murmurs my untethered heart. This is a muted call to prayer emerging from a submerged and dislocated minaret, a call to morning chanting. My legs have become the oars of a boat rowed in opposite direction by its several occupants. I'm only aware of the urgent fact that it is precisely this fleeting interlude of light between night and day when a naked eye can first distinguish a black thread from a white one, a clearly defined instant prescribed for morning prayer by my 13th century old scripture, the Quran. I examine the sphere of this world spinning under the rising sun, the millions of inhabitants of each new land aligning themselves wave upon wave to offer their shared harmonies. However, there is also an insistent, albeit consciously suppressed, voice already tugging at my sleeve to redirect my attention elsewhere. It claims this is Amrit Vela, that ambrosial pause when the Guru's blessing descend upon all those who seek them. In the Amrit Vela, chant the true name and contemplate his glorious greatness. The devotees of the Lord plant the seed of the Lord's wealth. In the ambrosial hours, they eat it and spend it, but it is never exhausted. A half hour later, my state of indecision finds me hovering close to the railing with the rolled prayer mat still tucked tightly under my arm. Every prayer is its own reward, or so I have been led to believe until now. However, throughout the night, bouts of exaltations wash over me, Meva, a tide that ebbs and rises, a moon that wanes empty and waxes full. Towards the end, there passes a brief hiatus in which Meva is alone and able to free his mind from his immediate surroundings and soar beyond the granite walls. It is late in the afternoon, staring idly out of a second-story window at the southern horizon. His eyes follow the shining strip of the Fraser River as it sluices down from the surrounding slopes of farmland and flows into the sea. He wonders if the tide will be moving upriver at this time of the day. All this sweet water flowing westwards, pouring into the salt-flecked waves, and the mouth of a greedy beast tirelessly fraying edges of this lush land. This sweet water then flows down into a maze of islands and further out into the ocean's open water spanning several days of sailing. The wind now carries him further till the Japanese Isle, and further still onto the Chinese shoreline, and then Hong Kong, and over the Malaysian isthmus to a soporific land called Hindustan. There, it sweeps over the Deccan plains until descending onto earth that is the shade of ripened grain, its patina deepened by the outpourings of sunlight, mountain streams, and the unburdening of clouds. Out of the dark interior of a familiar hut, there emerges an ancient woman with a stooped back, staring up at the sky while shading her eyes with an arthritic hand. An equally ancient man heads out to the fields at the outskirts of the village. Buffaloes festooned with naked boys wallow in a muddy pool. O my mother, O my father, O my youth, this the land I once nurtured with my sweat. I'm sorry, I will not return. Farewell. But what is this that he sees in the middle of his vast open field? This imposing tree with roots that are deeper than the stretch of its barren branches, and each of its branches is festooned with birds that have soiled the land beneath them. As Meva watches, the flocks begin to rise and come to settle on the ground, endless wave upon wave rising into the sky and descending across the entire countryside, plundering it all, of all its harvest. Eating crow, with morning hunger pangs and errant winds buffeting him afar. Raven finds him beneath him an unfamiliar forest. Here every feature is white, all blanketing as snow. Even the raven's hair are bleached, all pale feathers, pupils, beaks, blending right back into the landscape. Raven clips his ragged wings, eagerly drifting down, hungering for a beakful of earth. Seeing him thus approaching, a blot across their perfect pale sky, an alarm is sounded. Flocks rise to intercept him in midair. Plummeting in self-righteous fury, Raven has time for one final thought. There are only two colors, black and red, and white. White is not even a color. During the month of monsoons, let's tune in to Rainsongs of Kotli, excerpts from Rainsongs of Kotli, the cover of my book. Once the flood waters had crested and then receded, this time the body of water left trapped inside Neher Mardan was greater than it had ever been. In fact, this reservoir would last well into the next season of floods when it would be further replenished. The fickle townfolk had by then gone back to feeding the fish with their prayers kneaded into flour petals, and Shafiq and Malhara were becoming distant myths. Schools of elusive Rao, brought in by the floods and trapped by the embankments, would grow to legendary proportions to taunt the local anglers. Their reprise, however, would eventually come to an end 5 years later when a passing column of soldiers would end it all with the casual toss of a hand grenade. The tragedy of that distant flooding of Kotli would be diluted over time and enter into the stuff of legends. And so would Malhara, who had known, like all similarly inclined men before him, the local concept of Parya Mela Chad Jana, that one must depart the carnival of life when it is at its peak. After all is said and done, what else is the sum of a man in the final reckoning but the essence of all his aspirations and his actions, an effervescence of all his fevers and evaporating humidities? For those of us who are left behind, Malhara's story remains suspended between the two notes that only time shall co-join, the pa and the ni. मकाम फैज कोई राह में जचा ही नहीं, जो कुएं यार से निकले तो सुए धार चले. My heart, Fez, could not approve any place en route. Forced out of my love's street, I made for the gallows straight. For the week of September 16, we shall speak of our exit wound. Excerpt from Exit Wounds. This poem was written in memoriam for Chin Banerjee, 1940 to 2020, and his loss is still fresh in my mind. This poem is called Entry and Exit Wounds. जिस तरह बंद दरवाजों पे गिरे बारिश सन फैज. I imagined a world in which insults would be hurled at somebody, and I'm following Faz's lead in which he's talking about stones being hurled onto somebody's door. Muhajir, Panagir, Rafiq, Paki, immigrant, refugee, wetback, FOTB. It is midnight already. Tell those who hurl stones at my window panes, heed your words, go home. A heartfelt thank you to the Surrey Muse for this opportunity to read my work.